fun. They go to Citrix changed their interface at one point, and it used to be that the questions were really easy to figure out, and now it's just about impossible. Get in here. All right. Oops. All right, so we've got a question from somebody here. Jim asks, you make an excellent point about making objective evaluations of staff skills. Can you suggest any tools, methods to evaluate and score the skills? Okay, so that's related to this area here, skills, the test team, and skills management. So, yes, the approach to doing this is first you do a task analysis, which is just, it's a fancy name for saying you sit down as a manager and you look at over the last N number of projects that we've done, however many you've worked on, 5, 10, whatever. What are the tasks that we had to carry out? Now this is going to be a lot easier if you have something like a Microsoft project file or other sort of Gantt chart that allows you to go through and review the tasks, right? And you come up with a common list of tasks that you had to carry out. Things like development of test cases for particular areas of the application or performance testing or setting up particular kinds of environments, right? So you need to be specific enough about the tasks to actually identify the skills required for them, but you want to try to do it as much as possible in a project-independent way. Then, for each one of those tasks, you ask yourself, what skills would somebody need to have to be able to do this task effectively, right? And now you're able to generate a list of skills that's driven by what you actually do. See, one of the mistakes I think people sometimes make when they're thinking about skills is they do this sort of blue sky exercise, this perfect world thing of, oh, what would the perfect tester be? Well, what skills would the perfect tester have? Who cares? You know, what skills do you actually need to have in your team, right? Now, you can do a little bit of forward-looking on this and say, well, there are some skills that I haven't needed on previous projects, but I am going to need on these upcoming projects based on these additional tasks I'm going to have to do. But it really all should be task-driven. It shouldn't just be, you know, wouldn't it be wonderful if we had testers who knew X, right? And then, so based on that, you now have this list of skills that you can tie back, trace back to particular tasks. So, okay, this is based on what is actually needed. And then you can come up with a way of scoring those. Now, one of the simple scale that I've used before is a 0 through 3 rating, where 0 is person knows nothing about this, right? They just have no knowledge whatsoever in this particular skill area. A 1 would mean they have some basic knowledge and they can carry out simple tasks that require this skill if they have someone available to help them. You can go and ask questions when they get stuck. A 2 would mean this person is generally competent to carry out tasks that require this skill. Every now and then they get stuck, but for the most part they're able to work independently and without daily guidance, right? And a 3 would be this person is a real expert. They really, really know this stuff. Now, there's some amount of subjectivity there, but as a manager, I mean, you know the difference between those 4 scores when you see it, right? You know the person that, you know, if I have a question about X, this is the person I go ask, right? That's your expert, right? So, you know, you can sit down and go through and score those for your team. And then depending on whether you're looking at a generalized team or a specialized team, then that depends on how you're going to identify the weaknesses, right? The generalized team, you want to have a lot of 2s for everybody, right? Like, so you take a spreadsheet, which is a good way to do this. You've got your list of skills in the spreadsheet. You got your people across the top of the spreadsheet. You'd want to just see this big field of 2s. That would be the perfect generalized team. Everybody's able to work independently on any task they have a perfectly generalized set of skills. Specialized team, what you would have is you would have clusters of threes, right? People who are specialized would be experts in particular areas, but in the other areas they might just have ones or twos or maybe even zeros. Okay, so you can set up a spreadsheet for this fairly simply and do it that way, and that's I think the best way to do it. I wish I could claim to have originated that, but that's just a fairly straightforward human resources technique, skills inventory, but it is quite effective. All right, so thank you, Jim, for the question. I have a question here from a number of questions here. A question here from Linda. Hi, I'm waiting for the webinar. Hopefully you're not. Hopefully you've heard it. Here's another question from Linda. How long should I wait? Well, if you're not hearing anything by 1 p.m. Central Time, there's something wrong. Okay, we got a question here from John Steinmetz. John, I hope you're still on the line. Sounds like you may believe that Agile is conceptually at odds with a comprehensive approach to testing. Is that correct? No, that's not. And I think that was partly addressed in the earlier set of questions. You know, a lot of the problems that we see, testing-related problems that we see with Agile, are problems that people have basically created for themselves by either misapplying Agile or assuming that Agile solves all problems and not understanding that some problems are out of scope. I mean, I think that Agile, like any other lifecycle model, has its pros and cons from a testing point of view, and as long as I'm careful to manage the disadvantages as a test manager, it can be perfectly effective in that environment. It's exactly the same as a V model. It's just a different set of challenges. Okay, we got a question here from Ashut. V model. What happens if one phase needs to be repeated? For example, system test phase. Will the V model in this case really be a V model as opposed to a circular model, I guess? Which is a good question, and I think that gets to the issue of under planning your testing, right? Because when he says repeat, I'm assuming he's saying I need to go back and rerun some or all of the tests that were previously run. Well, if I planned properly, by properly here I mean with a proper expectation of the number of bugs that I'm going to find and the amount of regression testing I'm going to need to do based on those bug fixes and so forth, then that's already part of the plan, right? If I get to the end of the scheduled system test time and we're not ready to ship, then something's wrong, right? There was a breakdown in the planning and estimation process. Now, I'm not saying that was the test manager's breakdown necessarily. The test manager may have been misinformed about how bad things were going to be when it was delivered. But nonetheless, you know, the testing period should be estimated in such a way that it's not just long enough to get through every test once, but it actually includes regression testing, confirmation testing, waiting for bug fixes, and so forth, right?